The story begins in the year 2045. A girl named Emma had lived at the Grayfield orphanage since birth. This facility was run by a woman whom everyone called Mama. She was responsible for taking care of the orphan. However, since Emma was already 15, she also helped Mama take care of the younger kids, along with two other teens, Norman and Ray. After class, the children were allowed to play in the garden, but absolutely forbidden to go past the orphanage gate. Each child had a tattoo on their neck, bearing their identification number, and the maximum age to stay at Grayfield was 16. However, occasionally some children were adopted by families. And today was the day little Connie got adopted. Everyone lovingly said goodbye to Connie. This made the older kids think that their own time there was almost over. Excited to see the outside world, Emma and Norman agreed to write letters to each other. When the hallway was quiet, Emma noticed that Connie forgot her favorite toy. Ray warned her that the gate lights were still on, and if Emma ran fast, she could still give the bunny to Connie. Even though Ray reminded her that going out late at night was forbidden, Emma's sadness made him agree to break the rules. The two of them ran across the garden while Ray watched nervously from the balcony. When they reached the dark gate area, they felt scared because it was so quiet. With only a truck there, Emma pulled up the curtain and was shocked by the sight, dropping the bunny in the process. Norman came closer and was also horrified to see Connie lying still in the back of the truck, with a strange flower growing from her chest. Right at that moment, they heard a noise and quickly crawled under the truck to hide. A giant foot stomped down right in front of them. The appearance of demons discussing the orphanage as a place to raise humans for their food. After placing Connie in a container, one demon complained that she was too small and asked when they could pick up the three older kids. The one who answered was none other than Mama, and Emma was stunned to discover she was selling the kids to the demons as food. A demon smelled something strange and decided to check under the truck, but only found the bunny because Emma and Norman had already escaped. Mama became suspicious when she saw the toy and took it back to the bedroom. The next day, Emma tried to keep smiling despite being terrified by what she had seen and began connecting the dots. Now she understood the reason for the strict rules and why no one ever wrote back after leaving. Emma and Norman crossed the barrier in the garden for the first time and were stunned to discover a towering wall. They planned to escape the orphanage before the demons came back, but didn't want to leave anyone behind and still didn't know how to get everyone out. Norman decided not to tell the other kids the truth until they had an escape plan. Suddenly, they heard a noise and returned to the garden, where a little girl was crying because her friend had gone missing in the forest. Mama calmly used a device like a compass and walked straight into the forest, then carried the girl back. Emma deduced that the device showed the location of the resident, and Norman guessed they had trackers in their ears. That meant Mama saw them cross the barrier earlier and purposely showed them the device as a warning. Because he was suspicious, Ray followed the two into the forest, and they told him everything. Ray agreed to escape with them, but thought bringing everyone was too risky, especially since no one knew what the outside world was like. The trio decided to investigate further in the library. They found some books donated by someone. With little Phil's help, they discovered the stamp in the books was a code. Each book had a different code, which led to the deduction that the demons were monitoring the kids' brain. That's why Mama forced them to study so much. That afternoon, Mama introduced a new assistant to everyone. When they were alone, Mama told her that 3 children had discovered the truth, and Krona was worried because in such cases, the rules required immediate handover. Mama responded firmly, forbidding her from reporting to the higher-ups, and said they just needed to monitor the children for a few more weeks until the next shipment. The next day, Emma and her friends began training the younger kids in preparation for the escape, but disguised these activities as games. Everything went smoothly until Corona showed up and wanted to join the tag game. Emma didn't flinch, telling Norman this was a chance to observe Corona more closely and understand the enemy. However, they didn't know that Corona also had her own plan. She planned to expose the strange things at Grayfield to the demons and take Mama's place. Corona played hard during the game, but soon realized she was facing extraordinary children. She even directly asked Mama about it, but got no answer. A few days later, Norman started to suspect the spy and thought it was time to reveal the secret step by step, starting with 2 of the older kids, John and Judah. John didn't believe it at first and got so angry he punched Ray, but Judah believed Emma and helped convince his friend. Norman told Emma and Ray that he had hidden 2 ropes in 2 different places and gave each of the 2 newly informed kids a different location. If one of the ropes disappeared, they'd know who the traitor was. But the next day, Norman revealed that he had switched the spots and that Ray was actually the spy. Ray admitted it and explained that he had volunteered for the job years ago after discovering the secret. In return, Mama promised to let him stay at the orphanage until he turned 16 and secretly gave him things from the outside world. Norman realized the real rope was still there, meaning Ray hadn't told Mama everything. Ray said friendship had changed him, and all of this was part of his spy plan. He was the one who had stolen Connie's stuffed bunny, leading Emma and Norman to the truth. Moreover, he had seen the signal device from the implants in their ears and confirmed he knew how to disable them. Emma forgave Ray and even felt sympathy for what he had been through. After that, Ray showed Norman the items he had hidden under the floor of his room and said he was just waiting for the order to act tomorrow. When Emma wasn't around, Ray repeated that bringing all the kids along was crazy. He suggested Norman trick Emma by pretending to agree so she would cooperate. But Norman confessed he couldn't make Emma cry because he loved her. Then, Ray told Mama that Norman planned to poison her with pesticide and detergent. Mama thanked him for the information, but also told Ray that the next shipment would be on his 16th birthday. John and Judah joined the trio, and they kept planning the escape until Corona appeared. She showed them the ID tattoo on her neck and the scar on her chest where the signal device used to be implanted, saying it could kill her the moment she stepped outside. With no hope of freedom, the only thing she wanted was to run a good farm, and this escape was her chance to overthrow Mama. Corona revealed that Mama's real name was Isabella, and that the place they were living in was Area 3. She left, inviting the kids to her room that night if they wanted more information. Emma advised everyone to be cautious, but agreed to meet her. In Corona's room, she admitted she had never seen the outside world, but knew everything was the result of a long war between humans and demons. When the territories were divided, some humans were left behind as part of the agreement to manage the production of humans as food for demons. Corona was surprised to see the kids already knew about the implants, and disappointed when they left without offering anything to fight Mama. The signal Ray was waiting for was a camera. When he came to get it, Mama reminded him that he only had 2 months left to live. Ray gathered everyone to take a group photo and told his friends he had everything needed for the plan. Suspicious, Corona suddenly inspected the dorm, and Judah saw her checking Phil's piggy bank. Judah immediately warned the others, and the group quickly moved everything to avoid suspicion. However, Corona began to suspect the space under the floor and decided to check everything again. She was reaching inside when Mama suddenly appeared and used the chance to retrieve the toy. Corona was devastated when Mama told her she would be transferred immediately. Before leaving, she secretly hid a pen in the dorm. At the gate, she met an old woman and began telling her everything about Grayfield. However, Granny defended Isabella and handed Corona over to a giant demon. The demon placed a flower in her chest, ending her life. As the rebel group finally began executing their plan, Ray was in charge of distracting Mama with a staged poisoning. However, Mama wasn't fooled and locked him in a room after noticing he was rushing and carrying a tracker. John, worried for his friend, rushed to rescue him and arrived just as Ray broke the door to escape. However, Mama caught them both as they were running toward the wall, and for the first time, she spoke to them directly. She said she loved all the children here, and that's why she gave them a life, hoping they would pass away in happiness. Emma ignored that justification and lunged at her, but Mama broke her leg. The other three arrived just as Mama announced that tomorrow would be Norman's farewell. Norman spent the whole day trying to hold back despair, and told his friends he'd rather be eaten by the demons than ruin the escape plan. But Ray and Emma refused to let him sacrifice himself. Emma asked Ray how he discovered the horrifying secret of Grayfield, and he revealed it was because he retained memories from early childhood. For that reason, Ray still remembered being in a place called Headquarters, where he saw demons along with many babies and adults. The gates at Grayfield lead to that place, which is why they can't escape through the gate. After explaining, Ray gave Norman a disabling device to use on his ear and attempt to escape the next day. Even if it failed, the plan was for Norman to hide until Emma's leg healed, making Mama believe he had truly escaped. When he returned to the dorm, Norman opened the drawer beside the bed and found the pen Corona had left for them. The next morning, Mama announced that Norman would be leaving, and the children were happy he had been adopted. The older kids tried to hide their anger because it was the first farewell they knew the truth about. While everyone was free to play outside, Don and Judah took Norman to the fence, while Ray and Emma hid in the garden. Norman crossed into the forbidden zone and threw the rope over the wall, climbed to the top while Mama was hosting an activity with the children. She quickly realized he was gone and looked surprised when checking the tracker. However, the rebels were even more shocked to see Norman return from the forest at night. He explained that the other side of the wall was a deep cliff and drew what he saw from above. He pointed out a place with a bridge where everyone could cross. When he returned with the disabling device, saying he didn't have time to use it, his two friends realized he had intended to come back all along. Norman only pretended to agree with their plan, but was still determined to sacrifice himself for his friend. Emma didn't accept this, and even knocked Norman down in front of everyone. When it was time for him to leave, she begged him to try escaping instead of giving up, but Norman refused to listen and still promised to write. Then Mama took him to the gate and stepped back, telling him to wait there alone. Not long after, a man appeared and introduced himself as the overseer in charge of protecting this world. He explained that demons needed to eat human brains to survive, and thanked Norman for that, saying that a human on the other side might be granted freedom thanks to his sacrifice. Worried about his friends, Norman asked if there were any humans outside who could be allies to those raised as food. The man replied yes, but they had all disappeared. This didn't work as expected, because Norman challenged the overseer's belief and bet on the opposite. He firmly believed there were still humans who wanted to help those living in the farms. The overseer had to admit that Norman was a very special boy, because he remained calm and even smiled as the demon came to take him. Ray and Emma were devastated by Norman's loss, too drained to continue the escape plan. Ray gave the disabling device to Don and Judah, saying they could try if they wanted to, since he had no more hope. Mama visited Emma and said she would recommend her for a promotion, and she could become a mama instead of turning into food for monsters. That way, she could continue taking care of the children and help others, which she believed was Emma's greatest talent. Emma was surprised by the offer, but couldn't betray her friends that way and fell into despair again, seeing all the rebels had lost their will to fight. Mama was pleased with the outcome, once again proving her methods always work. 2 months later, it was Ray's birthday. Emma came to see him in the middle of the night after her leg had healed. They hadn't talked much lately because Mama had been watching them closely, but now, both of them admitted that they hadn't given up on the escape plan. Emma said she had assigned tasks to John and Judah to avoid drawing attention, and now everything was ready. She planned to escape. The next day, at lunchtime, Emma announced she would lead all the residents out, just as she originally intended. However, Ray said it wouldn't work because Mama would soon be expecting it. He showed Emma his plan. Ray's idea was to burn down the orphanage and make Mama's superiors think the escape was just an emergency evacuation. Ray explained all of this to Emma as he poured gasoline around the dining room, leaving his friend in panic as he emptied the last can over himself. Ray was the top student in the class, and his brain was so valuable that Mama wouldn't notice anything else once she saw him burning. He lit the fire before Emma could stop him, and from outside, we saw the dining room engulfed in flames. Soon after, the fire alarm rang, and as expected, Mama rushed over. At that moment, she panicked when the tracker showed Ray was right inside the fire. The children started coming down from their rooms, and Mama told Judah to take them outside while she searched for a fire extinguisher. However, the fire spread too quickly, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't put it out alone. Then Mama thought about saving at least Emma. But when she started shouting for Emma, she realized the girl had long disappeared. At that moment, Mama realized the children weren't in pajamas when they came down, as if they had known this would happen. By then, they were already in the forest, where John and Judah had hidden everyone's bags. Ray was also with them, and we discovered the fire hadn't started when Ray lit the match. Emma had put out the fire before it reached the floor and called the children to help finish the rest, creating a dummy to take Ray's place. The hardest part was removing the tracker from Ray's ear, but this was crucial in finally fooling Mama. While the group ran toward the walls, Emma told Ray about what really happened over the past 2 months. Norman had seen the gasoline cans and predicted Ray would try to distract Mama by starting a fire. So, he left a letter for Emma with all the instructions she'd need to prepare for this day. Emma used that time to coordinate the plan through Don and Judah, gradually revealing the secret to the other children. Only the little kids were left. But Emma put Phil in charge of organizing them as they grew up, and promised to come back to save them before they reached the consumption age. Moreover, the little ones turned out to be very helpful at this moment. When Mama was about to catch the escapees, they surrounded her, pretending to be scared and asking for hugs. After struggling for a while to get free, Mama warned her superiors that a rebellion had occurred and requested reinforcements. While the rebels had reached the top of the wall, Emma was startled to hear the headquarters alarm ring earlier than expected. However, she still had one last move to play. At that moment, she told Ray that they weren't running toward the bridge like the enemy expected. In the letter, Norman had pointed out the narrowest part of the cliff, and that's where Don fired the rope across. Emma was the last to cross, and Ray panicked when he saw Mama had reached the top of the wall, running toward them. The two faced each other, and Mama confessed that she had once stood there before, when she thought about escaping at their age, but the sight of the cliff and forest made her give up. Emma replied that she wasn't leaving alone, and that even if there's no place for humans in this world, they could still create a new one with their own hand. Mama grew angry, threatening to cut the rope before Emma reached the other side. After Emma's words, she remembered her youth and realized that Ray was her son, and felt regret. In the forest, Emma picked up the pen Norman had left along with the letter and discovered a hidden device inside. When she twisted the two halves of the pen, it projected the image of an owl flying ahead, guiding them to safety. The next day, Isabella was sentenced for her negligence in letting Emma and Ray escape. Then, the wicked creature appeared and used a deadly flower on her chest. Meanwhile, the group of youths climbed a hill and from the top gazed at the vast world awaiting them. A world full of opportunities ready to be explored, and the movie ends here.